In the bustling city of Lagos, specifically in the affluent neighborhood of Ikoyi, there lived a highly successful couple, Akpus and Rita. The duo owned a sprawling textile complex, famous for its vast collection of high-quality materials. Their business was so prominent that it attracted top government officials and influential personalities who regularly patronized them. Despite their wealth and busy schedules, Akpus and Rita cherished their only son, Ben. Ben was a remarkably bright and diligent boy, excelling in school and making his parents proud. Every morning, Akpus and Rita made it a point to drop Ben off at the bus stand so he could catch his ride to school. However, in the afternoons, the bus would drop him off at the same spot, where his parents were supposed to pick him up. But their work at the textile complex often consumed their time. Some days, Ben would wait patiently at the bus stop, watching as other children reunited with their parents, while his own were tied up attending to customers. Occasionally, Rita would suddenly remember her son, hastily leaving the shop to pick him up, her face flushed with guilt. One evening, after another exhausting day at the shop, Akpus and Rita sat together in their living room, discussing how they could better manage their time to be there for Ben. The thought of their son waiting alone in the dark weighed heavily on them. "My dear," Akpus began thoughtfully, "why don't we ask someone to help us look after Ben until we're done with work? It's becoming too difficult to balance everything." Rita considered the suggestion, then nodded in agreement. "You're right. But who can we trust to watch over him? We need someone close by." Their minds turned to their next-door neighbor, Omalicha. She was a flamboyant and striking young woman, known across the neighborhood for her extravagant lifestyle and trendy outfits. Omalicha had earned a reputation as one of the biggest slay queens in Lagos. However, to Akpus and Rita, she seemed like an ideal candidate since she was always at home and appeared friendly. The next day, while Akpus tended to the shop, Rita decided to approach Omalicha with her request. As she walked up the driveway to Omalicha's beautifully decorated house, she rehearsed her plea in her head. When Omalicha opened the door, she was dressed in a stylish outfit, her makeup flawless, and her nails freshly done. She smiled warmly at Rita, inviting her inside. Rita hesitated for a moment, taking in the luxurious decor of the house, before explaining her predicament. "Omalicha, I'm so sorry to bother you," Rita began, her tone humble. "It's just that Akpus and I are always so busy with the shop, and we're struggling to pick Ben up from the bus stand after school. I was wondering if you could help us. Would it be okay if Ben stays with you after school until we get back?" Omalicha's perfectly arched brows rose slightly in surprise, but she quickly flashed her dazzling smile. "Oh, of course, Rita. It's no problem at all. I'd be happy to help. Ben is such a sweet boy." Relieved, Rita clasped her hands together. "Thank you so much, Omalicha. This really means a lot to us. I'll make sure he doesn't bother you too much." With their arrangements settled, Rita left Omalicha's house feeling a sense of hope. She couldn't have known that her decision to entrust Ben to Omalicha would set off a series of events that would change their lives forever. Omalicha welcomed Ben into her home with open arms, showering him with love, care, and attention. Whenever she stepped out, she'd return with a thoughtful gift for the young boy, putting a bright smile on his face. Ben's parents were initially worried about leaving him in someone else's care, but Omalicha's kindness and generosity quickly alleviated their concerns. As time passed, Ben grew more comfortable in Omalicha's presence. She'd often dress in revealing outfits, but Ben, being just a child, didn't think twice about it. Omalicha would frequently entertain male guests for business purposes, but Ben remained oblivious to the implications. His focus was on the fun times he shared with Omalicha, who spoiled him with toys and treats. When Ben's parents arrived to pick him up each evening, he'd feel a pang of reluctance, not wanting to leave Omalicha's side. She had become a constant source of joy and excitement in his life. As Ben entered his teenage years, Omalicha began to notice the changes in him. She found herself drawn to his youthful energy and charm, but kept these feelings hidden from his parents. On Ben's 18th birthday, Omalicha surprised him with a brand new PlayStation 5, his favorite gaming console. Ben was over the moon with excitement, feeling grateful for Omalicha's kindness. She took him shopping, buying him stylish clothes and shoes, and even threw him a mini birthday party. Ben's parents attended the celebration, thanking Omalicha for her generosity and thoughtfulness. The following day, Omalicha approached Ben with a mysterious smile. "I want to play a game with you," she said, her voice low and husky. Ben's eyes lit up, thinking she wanted to challenge him to a soccer match on the PS5. But Omalicha's intentions were far from innocent. "It's a love game," she whispered, her eyes locked on Ben's. Ben's confusion was palpable. "Auntie, I don't understand," he stammered. Omalicha's smile grew wider as she disappeared into her room. She emerged moments later, dressed in a provocative outfit that left little to the imagination. Ben's eyes widened as Omalicha began to twerk seductively in front of him. Ben's naivety was evident, but as the days passed, he found himself becoming increasingly drawn to Omalicha's charms. A dangerous game had begun, one that would test the boundaries of their relationship and leave Ben questioning everything he thought he knew about love and loyalty. As the days went by, Ben found himself becoming more and more entranced by Omalicha's seductive behavior. She would often dress provocatively, revealing her curves and tempting Ben with her charms. At first, Ben tried to brush off his feelings, telling himself that Omalicha was just being friendly and that he was reading too much into her actions. But as time passed, Ben couldn't shake off the feeling that Omalicha was intentionally trying to seduce him. He would catch her gazing at him with a look of desire in her eyes, and he could sense the tension between them whenever they were alone together. Despite his growing unease, Ben couldn't help but feel drawn to Omalicha. She was beautiful, charming, and seemed to genuinely care for him. But he knew that he had to be careful, that getting involved with Omalicha could lead to serious consequences. One day, as they were sitting together in the living room, Omalicha reached out and gently stroked Ben's face. "You're so handsome, Ben," she whispered, her voice husky with desire. Ben felt a shiver run down his spine as he met her gaze, his heart pounding in his chest. "Auntie, please," he stammered, trying to pull away from her. But Omalicha held him firm, her eyes locked on his. "I just want to show you how much I care for you, Ben," she whispered, her lips inches from his. Ben's mind was racing as he tried to process what was happening. He knew that he had to get out of there, to escape from Omalicha's clutches before it was too late. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw something there that gave him pause. Something that made him wonder if maybe, just maybe, Omalicha's feelings for him were genuine. And with that thought, Ben's resolve began to crumble. He felt himself being pulled into Omalicha's web of seduction, and he wasn't sure if he had the strength to resist. As Ben grew older and moved to the university, he finally began to enjoy his independence. His parents, Akpus and Rita, were proud of him, believing they had done everything they could to set him on the right path. Little did they know, a storm was brewing that would shake their family to its very core. One day, while in the middle of his studies, Ben received shocking news. Omalicha, the woman who had cared for him throughout his teenage years, was pregnant, and he was the father. The announcement spread like wildfire, reaching his parents before Ben had a chance to process what was happening. Akpus and Rita were horrified. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. "How could Omalicha do this to our son?" Rita cried, pacing the living room. "She's 15 years older than him. She's trying to ruin his future." Akpus was equally furious. "We trusted her to take care of him, and she betrayed us. We can't let this go unpunished." Determined to protect their son's reputation and future, Akpus and Rita took drastic action. They pressed charges against Omalicha, accusing her of manipulating and exploiting Ben. Before Ben could even return home, his parents had Omalicha arrested and thrown into a cell. When the news reached Ben, he was overwhelmed. Conflicted and confused, he decided to leave school and return home immediately. He needed to confront his parents and make sense of the chaos. As soon as he walked through the front door, he was met with his parents' furious expressions. "Ben, don't worry," Akpus began. "We've taken care of everything. That woman won't trouble you anymore." But Ben's face darkened. "What do you mean, taken care of everything? What did you do?" "We had her arrested," Rita said firmly. "She's trying to destroy your life, Ben. We won't allow it." To their utter shock, Ben's response was not one of relief but anger. What? You had Omalicha arrested, he shouted. How could you do that? I love her. The room fell silent as Akpus and Rita stared at their son in disbelief. You love her? Rita whispered, her voice trembling. Yes, I do, Ben replied, his tone unwavering. Omalicha has been there for me my entire life. She's the one who understands me, who cares for me. I'm not going back to school. I'm staying here, and I'm going to marry her. The words hit Rita like a lightning bolt. Unable to handle the shock, she fainted on the spot, collapsing into Akpus's arms. Panicking, Akpus called for an ambulance, and Rita was rushed to the hospital. Ben stood in the hospital hallway, guilt gnawing at him but resolute in his decision. When Rita regained consciousness, her first words were a plea. Ben, please, don't do this. Think about your future. But Ben shook his head. I've made up my mind, Mom. I'm going to be with Omalicha, no matter what. Despite their efforts to reason with him, Ben refused to change his stance. His parents were heartbroken, unable to reconcile how things had spiraled so far out of control. They knew, deep down, that their negligence and trust in Omalicha had contributed to the situation. Years passed, but the wounds in the family never fully healed. Ben went on to marry Omalicha, distancing himself from his parents. Akpus and Rita lived out their days with a heavy burden of guilt, knowing they had lost their son to a series of mistakes they had made. Ben, on the other hand, never forgave them for their actions against Omalicha. His love for her, born out of years of care and influence, outweighed the bond he once shared with his parents. And so, the family lived with the consequences of their choices, a reminder of how fragile trust and love can be when mishandled. Years passed, and Ben's life with Omalicha was far from the fairy tale he had imagined. Though their love was born from a complicated past, the reality of their relationship began to take its toll. Omalicha, now much older, struggled to keep up with Ben's youthful energy and aspirations. Their once playful bond became strained as the weight of their history loomed over them. Ben often reflected on his decision, questioning whether his rebellion against his parents had truly been worth the cost. He missed the warmth of family dinners, the pride in his mother's eyes, and the steady guidance of his father. But his pride and loyalty to Omalicha kept him from mending the broken bridge with Akpus and Rita. Meanwhile, Akpus and Rita grew old, living with a constant ache in their hearts. They spent their days in quiet regret, often reminiscing about Ben's childhood and the dreams they had for his future. They knew they had played a role in the events that tore their family apart but felt powerless to undo the damage. One fateful day, a letter arrived at Akpus and Rita's doorstep. It was from Ben. For the first time in years, he had reached out. In the letter, he apologized for the pain he had caused them and expressed a longing to reconcile. He admitted that while he loved Omalicha and their child, he missed his parents and wanted them to be part of his life again. Akpus and Rita, overwhelmed with emotion, wept as they read the letter. They wrote back immediately, inviting Ben, Omalicha, and their grandchild to visit. It wasn't an easy decision, but they knew it was time to heal the wounds of the past. When Ben arrived with Omalicha and their child, there was an awkward silence at first. But as the hours passed, the barriers between them began to crumble. Rita hugged her grandson tightly, tears streaming down her face, while Akpus shook Ben's hand firmly, a silent promise of forgiveness. Over time, the family worked to rebuild their bond. It wasn't perfect, and the memories of their mistakes lingered, but they learned to focus on the present and cherish the moments they had left together. In the end, their story became a lesson in forgiveness, the fragility of trust, and the enduring power of love. Not just romantic love, but the deep, complicated love that binds families together, even in the face of heartbreak. While scars remained, they chose to live in peace, proving that even the most fractured families can find their way back to each other with time, understanding, and effort. If you are joining for the first time, kindly hit the subscribe button, like my video and share to as many people as possible. See you in my next episode.